as we get ready for Boston's own Sheena, Collier. Hey, 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 go, go Sheena, go Sheena.
All right, good afternoon. Come on, good afternoon. It's all good, baby, right? It was all a dream. Knew from age 4 I would become a queen. Affirmations on my wall. Every Saturday, ran the streets with Tisha and Jamar. I left Albany so I could find me. Spelman to Harvard, now getting black people free. Wear black like a boss of wild black fitted hat with the shirt to match. I blow it up like you thought I would. Big Sheen, same number, new hood. It's all good. And if all right. Woo! Thank you. All right, I just wanted to wake y'all up a little bit since I'm the last speaker. That's right. Big Sheen's my other name. All right. So happy to be here with you all. I'm going to just go into my story. I know we're talking about, that's me from Albany. That's the Sheen you just heard. But for me, in all seriousness, social capital is something that started at home for me before I even know it was a term, right? This is something that a lot of us have built without even really knowing what we were talking about. And the first connector I ever knew was my father, Rufus James Collier. He moved to Albany from Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm the youngest of 8, so my parents were significantly older. So by the time I came along, my father had been at the March on Washington. He had organized with A. Philip Randolph and the Pullman Porters. And as I was coming along, he was a leader in the union for New York State workers. So I grew up in this just spirit of organizing. This was our house, 36 Pennsylvania Ave, and it was the center of community. And it was really where I learned what it meant to be a connector. You would find anyone in our house, from the Black city councilors who were in the neighborhood to folks that were just looking for a plate to eat. We had at least 2 cookouts a year, if not more. Lots of parties happened in this house. My father planned a new vision for our community in this house. And for me, it was really a place where I started to understand. I didn't know what it was back then, but I started to understand what it meant to be building community for others. Right down the street from this house was my elementary school, Arbor Hill Elementary School, where it's where I really built my love for education. So for folks that don't know, I actually came here to get my master's in education at Harvard. And where that started was when I was 6. I had a Black woman first grade teacher, Miss Alvania Hill. I had a Black woman elementary school principal, and they poured into me. And not only did I see women that looked like me early in my education, but they also went to church with my family. The church that I attended was a church where my grandfather had been the preacher, and I sang in the choir, though I can't sing. And so, but I could rap. But I just really came to understand there, what it looked like when people pour into you, what it looks like when a community is all connected. And I took that with me as I moved throughout my life. Now, my mother, she wanted me to get up out of Albany. She really pushed me to really grow beyond where I had grown up. Both her and my father were very serious about my education. I was reading by age 3. So they were really serious. But my father, he wanted me to stay in Albany and go to college. And my mother wanted me to go to HBCU, a historically Black college, and specifically Spelman. And I never had really asked her until I got older why this was such a big deal for her. This picture on the left is her college graduation. She didn't graduate until I was in middle school from college. So she hadn't experienced an HBCU, but she just knew it was somewhere that she wanted me to be. And when I asked her, literally just like in the last 2 years, I thought to ask her about it, she didn't know the term social capital, but what she said was, because she knew where I was supposed to go, she knew that I had to build new networks to do that. And she knew I had to get out of Albany to be able to do that and be in a new environment. And so she really pushed me, literally, to go to Spelman. And it was truly a new environment. I think people assume because it's a Black college that you just belong. You know, everyone was Black, everyone was a girl, but they were very different than me. A lot of the girls were very different than me. Even though I had been poured into as a young person, I was in summer camps, enrichment programs. This is when STEM was just coming out, so I was making HTML web pages. You know, my mother was a young homeowner. My aunts and my sister actually had went to a HBCU. But when I got to Spelman, I realized just how small my world was, how much I hadn't been exposed to, particularly as far as social class. And so I went into a shell. I actually withdrew a lot in Spelman. There's Spelman women that I meet now that was like, girl, I was so scared to talk to you in college. I definitely had a New York attitude. Even to the point where in my freshman dorm at the end of the year, I got an award, and they named me Sheena Cut 'em Off Collier. Because once you cross me, you probably were never gonna talk to me again. And so that was my reputation, and I actually, you know, honestly hold a lot of regret for how I didn't leverage this social network when I was there, because I didn't know how. I felt so out of my comfort zone that I didn't realize the networks that I had access to. I did make up for it when I moved here. So everyone wants to go to Harvard, right? But I didn't. And this was another push for my mother. She said, look, you're gonna sacrifice, if you will, your time to be able to say for the rest of your life that you're a graduate of Harvard University. I went to Harvard Graduate School of Education. And so, thank you. And so I came straight out of college. I was only 21 years old. I had skipped a grade earlier in my education, so I was only 21 years old. And I moved up here with the belief that this 1 year of my life, it was a 1-year master's program, would change, you know, I'd be able to kind of carry this, you know, this is the beacon of social capital, right, Harvard. That's what we're told, that you go to Harvard, and I'm not gonna lie, it's a flex. You know, I do get to tell people I went to Harvard. However, even at Harvard, coming from Spelman, doing well academically, I got a 4.0 GPA at Harvard. I didn't feel like I belonged. And I didn't feel like it was somewhere where I belonged, even though I had worked hard to get there. That's not your earring, Jimmy, that's mine. even though I had worked hard to get there. And it was because I was sitting in the classroom next to people who I went to be, at that time I was gonna be a child psychologist. And so we were studying risk factors and protective factors. And in layman terms, we were looking at data that decides whether or not a child is gonna succeed. And if you looked at this data, I wasn't supposed to be in that classroom. And so I was sitting next to people who were talking in theory, and they didn't even see me sitting next to them. And so I had this real struggle that even though I was on paper supposed to be there, this wasn't somewhere that was for me and somewhere where I belonged. I will say what I found at Harvard is the thread that has gone through the rest of my career is really around social capital and helping others to not find it, not build it, but unlock the social capital that they already have. And so this is a snapshot of my career in Boston. Folks remember my fro and my flower. But I've had different titles, but the work has been the same. You know, it's been around how do we help people to connect? How do we help people to activate their network? I did it here in Roxbury, connecting families and children in education at DSNI. I did it through political campaigns that I worked on. I've done community organizing and knocking on doors where I met many of you all. This is my 20th year in Boston. So I've met a lot of folks along the way. And I met Eric as he was founding UCB at the time when I was at DSNI, and was drawn to the mission because of this idea of rewarding social capital. Now, well, leading up to now, there was a time where I was having a little existential crisis, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. I was having a little bit of a issue with staying in education, and so I wrote out my personal mission statement. Someone had me do this exercise. It's something I encourage you all to do. is write out, what is your personal mission? What are you here for? Like, what do you think you're here to do? The job will follow. And what I wrote was, my mission is to connect Black people to information, access, resources, opportunities, and each other. And anything I do needs to reflect that. And that led me to found Boston While Black. And so for Boston While Black, we are the leading connector to community and culture for Black people in Boston. A big part of the founding of Boston While Black has been me really leveraging my social capital and lending it, to others in the city. I had done a great job over more than a decade of building an amazing network. But I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing it for Sheena from Albany. I'm doing it for the people in the city who don't necessarily know how to leverage their networks. And so now, here we are all across the city, taking up space. We are creating this deep sense of belonging for Black people to transform the places where they live, work, and play. And what I learned, and what is important to me about social capital, and what I've learned, is one of the most important threads, it's either a person or an entity, it's the role of the connector. And that's the role that I personally play. That's a role that Boston While Black plays for others. And so, while in my head, I do often feel like I'm still just a girl from Albany. I carry that with me. You will often find me rapping in many places. I have come to learn, through my upbringing in Albany, through my search for my identity at Spelman, through my trying to find a place of belonging at Harvard, and through my role as a connector in Boston, that we all have social capital. And what it really takes is more Boston While Blacks, more union capitals to help us all access it. So thank you.